Hello and welcome to this presentation called On the Use of Images. My name is Andreas Josefsson and I work as an educational media consultant at CED, Center for Educational Development, here at Lund University. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the use of images. We are very accustomed to how to use text. We know how to read, write, spell, the correct use of grammar, and we keep training this all through grade school, high school, into higher education and beyond. But how to express ourselves with images, that is something we often leave to people in the advertising industry or to artists. But still, we're expected to use images, and we do use images. And as a lecturer, you often use images as a visual aid when you do your lectures. So, how do we approach images? How can we use them more effectively? We need to know a little bit about them. Know your enemy. So, what are the qualities of images? Well, first of all, they create focus. We tend to be interested by images. We are psychologically wired to make sense of visual stimuli. And the image is complex stimuli that we want to structure, to categorize and understand. The image compared to the text is open with so many possible interpretations. There are so many details that we can pay attention to and that will awaken different associations in our mind. And that is a good thing, because associations that benefits processing and memorization and access. So it's good. But it also has the consequence that we cannot be absolutely sure what everybody brings with them from the image. If I say we have 10 milligrams of sulfuric acid, everybody knows that it's that, nothing else. But if I show an image of 10 milligrams of sulfuric acid, I cannot be sure that everybody understands it or get what I mean. The good thing about this diversity is that we can use it as a basis for discussion, to share perspectives, to widen the scope. And that's a good thing. The bad thing is that if I don't have at least some idea about my target audience, the students in this case that I'm lecturing to, what their frames of references are, what social group they belong to, where they are in their education, how they're feeling at the moment. If we don't know who we're talking to, we might provide images that they do not understand, or at least do not understand in the same way as I do or you do. So we need to know a little bit about the person we're talking to. They're not there to decipher your message. You are there to guide and illustrate the message. Guide them through the message and illustrate it. The contextually bound meaning is important because if I move between contexts, between cultures, or even through time, things will change meaning because the meaning is dependent on social conventions. This also leads to that we need to know who we're talking to. And finally, the image provides an immediate emotional response almost. When you read a text, you have to process it and then you can react. But when you see an image, that processing is so much faster and it evokes so much more emotional reaction. And that can be used both in a good and a bad way. So let's talk about this image. This is a portrait of two young merchants painted by Hans Holbein the Younger. And to me at least, this image talks about refinement. It talks about high culture, highbrow. But what was the meaning of this image when it was painted? What's this about? Well, to translate this into something we understand easier, we have to go here. And this meaning is very clear. We have a luxury car, designer clothing, exclusive accessories, an attitude. This is an image about success. It's an image about prowess. And this earlier image is just the same. This is an image of two young merchants that say, we are well traveled, we are rich, we are well educated, do business with us, or marry us, or both. So, meaning change over time between contexts. In visual communication, we often talk about the image superiority effect, which simply means that if we're presented with an image with some text and some verbal communication, we will start by processing the image. So by knowing this, we know that we can use the images to guide the attention and to point out where the important things are. And the message that the image conveys will be spontaneously stronger than the meaning that the text conveys or that what you're saying. So this is an image of, it's a screen dump from Pinterest, the social imaging site. And we have here eye movement tracking. So the green lines are how the eye moves over the page, and the red circles are where the eye stops and dwells. And as you can see, the images take precedence. They are the most interesting things in this context. And images of people are more interesting than things. And images of faces are more interesting than just images of people. That's how we are. So, and once we have deemed the image relevant or interesting, then we might end up reading the text, as you can see in this case. And then we might listen to what you're saying at the same time. In advertising, the image superiority effect is very well used. Here we have an example from the tobacco industry. We have an image of a happy, free, seize the day, seize life, happy-go-lucky man who's brave, untamed, a real manly man, uncaring. To many people, some kind of ideal. And the text that is ornamented, the text that is the most interesting or pleasing to the eye, is the one that carries the message that the advertiser wants us to remember. Some days weren't meant to be tamed, you know, just to heck with everything, you know, just go with the flow, do what you feel. Carpe diem. And then we have the text that has the completely opposite message. And that text is boring. It's in a square, it has a very simple typeface, it's easy to read, but it's not interesting for the eye. And that text is the voice of reason that says smoking is bad. And spontaneously, if we have to choose just based on the visuals, we will choose the interpretation that is the most fun or pleasing to the eye. An image can be very strong and evoke very strong emotional reactions. If we see an image of a traffic accident or a war zone or something, we might even get physically sick and turn off, shut down. But the image can also be used to approach more difficult things, soften the blow. Like this image here, where the Republicans put out this ad during the Obama-McCain campaign. Obama is pictured as a Caucasian and McCain as an African American. And what they're saying here is that we shouldn't look at ethnicity first. We should look at the political issues, the actual political agenda. And I think it works. It made me stop and think, at least. And if they would have put in a text in the paper that said, "We find it unfair that Obama is more popular just because he's black," it wouldn't have worked. It would have been offensive. So, images can soften the blow. What then grabs our attention? How do we choose what to look at? Well, we look at the things that are different. That sounds very obvious, and it is, but it's also very important. And by thinking actively about this, we can use it. And what difference? Well, difference in experience. This looks like nothing I ever seen before, or in context. This looked like nothing else I see at the moment. And it's all about contrast. So we, for example, take this image. We have a lot of buttons here, and most of them tend to become rather anonymous and more be a mass of buttons. But most people will identify the big yellow button. Well, it's bigger, it's brighter, it's different. It has a contrast in many contrasting qualities. So we single that out. It becomes an individual. And once we have, bored of that, we start looking for something else, and then we probably will end up on the blue button, because that's also big and bright, and it's also close to the first thing that we found interesting, the yellow button. Attention, we can create attention through difference. But is that enough? No. Once you have caught my attention, I will start thinking, is this relevant? And if I don't find it relevant, I will ignore it. So, to actually get someone's interest, to make someone invest some interest into something, it has to be both attention grabbing and relevant. So no more kittens, no more sunsets, no more cute paintings of zebras on hands, because they're not relevant. Unless that's your topic, of course. And as I showed earlier on the image with the buttons, first we start looking at the big yellow button. That's what grabs our attention. And then we start looking for the next most important thing. And we will start looking for things that are close to this. This is the basis for most visual hierarchy. How we decide which way to navigate through an image and how to decide relationships between things in an image. The closer two things are, the more they are connected. If we see two people walk through the park 10 meters apart, we don't pay any attention to that. We don't think anything of it. But if they're walking hand in hand, they probably have some kind of relationship. And the same with this image of the three pelicans here. Just because the middle pelican is a little bit closer to the one on the right, we start asking us why. Is the third pelican, the one to the left, does he have a bad breath, or are the two other, bullies, or what's this all about? We create some kind of story. And this is the same with layout. We start looking for the most interesting thing, in this case the face. And after the face, we start looking for the next most interesting thing. And the big words with the big letters, the capitals in the beginning, that is something that draws our attention. So still hidden is something we will be looking at. And then we will be looking for the next most interesting thing. And that's, what's the closest thing? Well, Findus. And then Icke. So we read through this image, still hidden, Findus, Icke. And then we think, well, where to go next? Well, the next closest thing is John Cage. So we read the subtitle. And when we read the subtitle, we look for the next closest thing, and that's the text. And as the text is kind of difficult to know where to start, we have put this extra large letter in the beginning that draws our attention. So in this way, we, through proximity, create a path through this rather complex visual input. That is what I want to tell you about images for now. There are a lot more to be said, but I hope you found this useful and interesting. Thank you for your time and attention.